Hello everyone. I'm going to talk this evening about macro photography. I'll explain what that is, although that's not an entirely simple thing to do. I will just start off by telling you a bit about what my interests are. My interests are insects in the wider sense, particularly well arthropods in general. So we include things like spiders and particularly in terms of identifying features that are needed to identify small things. Now that could be plants or mosses or fungi or whatever. The same principles apply to all of them. But all of the examples I think I'm going to show you this evening are based on insects. But as I say, the principles are more widespread. What I'm not going to do, with one exception, is recommend particular items of equipment. I'm not going to say buy this, buy that, buy something else, and that's quite important because a question I get asked quite a lot is what camera should I buy? And if I don't get asked that, I normally get asked what camera do you have? And I'll say something about that as we go through the talk. So this is what you can see on the screen is a springtail. This is one of the big springtails. This one is about 4 millimeters long. So let's just start off talking about macro photography. What is it? So generally, there is no universally accepted definition of macro photography, but generally, what most people would say it's when you capture an image on a camera sensor. So in the old days, it would be film, but these days it's almost all electronic, which is life size or greater. So that's to say a 1-to-1 ratio between the thing that you're photographing and the actual image that you're capturing. So we're not talking about what you see on a screen if you share a photograph. We're not talking about if you blow it up and make a huge poster out of it. We're talking about what the image that's actually being formed inside the camera. So this diagram is a diagram of a typical photograph. So here we've got quite a large image, and this is some distance away from the camera. And the image that's formed inside the camera by the lens is actually much smaller than the object that's being photographed. So that's normal photography, if you like, or non-macro photography. In macro photography, the object is generally much closer to the camera because obviously if you try and photograph something small a long way away, you don't get a very good image. And the image is at the same size or even greater than the object. So if you think about how this ray diagram would change under those circumstances, the object would be here, very close to the lens, and we'd be bending the light an awful lot to form that image on the sensor. And I'll try not to inflict too much physics on you this evening, but there is a little bit of physics a few times that we have to go through. So generally, macro photography make capturing life-size or greater images. Again, not in the final version that you view on a screen or on a print, but actually within the camera. So sounds fairly straightforward. Why is it so difficult? Well, there's a couple of reasons why it's so difficult. One of the main problems that dogs macro photography is you never have enough light. Well, with one exception, you never have enough light. So photography actually means drawing with light. And so one of the problems is illumination, and there are a couple of reasons why that's difficult. Um, uh, and I'll talk about some of those as we go through. The other reason is that as the magnification increases, any movement between the subject and the camera causes blur. Now, that could be because the subject itself is moving, or it could be because the camera is moving. So the solutions to the camera moving are that you need steady hands, or you can use a tripod. That doesn't help you if the subject is moving, either because it's running around or it's flying, or, and this is one of the worst things for macro photography, on a windy day. Trying to do outdoor macro on a windy day is virtually impossible because even tiny movements, because of the magnification involved, will cause problems. So the normal one of the best, I mean, obviously not moving the camera is the fundamental thing, but there are limits there, particularly if you're hand holding the camera, if you're not using a tripod, and it's not always easy to use a tripod for macro. The one of the ways around this problem of blur is to increase the shutter speed of the camera. Now, the problem with that is to increase the shutter speed of the camera and still form an image, we need even more light. So we're in a bit of a vicious circle, really, in that regard. And so this is why lighting is important. And I will talk a little bit about lighting as we go through. As with all photography, lighting is really the key aspect because generally speaking, we need in most circumstances to get really good macro photographs. We need some sort of additional light. So it could be a flash gun, such as we see here, or it could be a light that's built into the camera. And I will talk a bit more about each of these options as we go through. The advantage of using a flash is that the duration of the flash is actually very short. It's much shorter than the actual shutter speed of the camera, so that really helps with freezing the motion of the subject, and it reduces blur caused by movement. But generally speaking, the more light you've got, the faster the shutter speed you can use, and therefore the less movement and blur becomes an issue. So always think about the lighting. Having said that, direct sunlight, very strong sunlight, is also a problem if you are able to arrange things such that you've got strong sun falling on your subject. It causes problems because it bleaches out all highlights. The contrast is just too great, and because the subject is so close to the camera, you won't get a good photo that way either. You need some nice soft lighting, and I'll talk about solutions for that as we go through. So, as I said, question I get asked a lot is what camera should I buy? And in order to answer that, I have to ask two questions in return. And the first question is, well, how much do you want to spend? Because that's important. And the second is, well, what do you want to take photographs of? What do you want to do with your camera? And normally the answers I get when I have this conversation with someone is, oh, well, I don't want to spend very much. I don't want to spend more than £100 or something like that, which can be a problem. It's not impossible, but it does limit your options, of course. And the other one is, oh, well, I want to do everything. I want to take some landscape pictures, and I want to take pictures of birds flying in the sky, and I want to take macro photos, and the problem is you can take any photograph with any camera, but it doesn't mean that all of the photographs that you take are going to be any good. Um, Cameras are good at certain things. There is no universal camera that will do everything. They just don't exist. And if they did, they'd certainly be more expensive than or cost more than you wanted to spend. So it's often said that the best camera is the one that you've got with you, and that is very true. And in that regard, the one camera that nearly all of us have with us these days are mobile phones. And mobile phones have come on enormously in the past few years. The cameras in them have improved greatly, but they still have their limitations. Um, the modern mobile phones will do macro photography, and you can get really quite close and form quite large images of very small subjects. but not as large as you will be able to do with a proper camera. And so there are various solutions. So I'm sure you may have seen these clip-on lenses that fit on to phones to give you additional magnification. There is a problem with that. One problem is these lenses have an incredibly short working distance. That's to say, the distance between the thing that you're photographing and the lens is incredibly short. It might only be a few millimeters. That makes it very difficult to see what you're doing, but even worse, it means that almost invariably, unless you get very lucky, you're blocking the light. And so you're getting into the problems that I just talked about because the lens and the phone will be in the way of the light unless you just happen to be lucky and the light is falling from the side. So I'm not knocking mobile phones. We all carry them around with us, and they're great. They're particularly good for things that don't move. So things like plants, fungi, things like that are fine. If you're trying to take a photograph of an insect that's running around, or an insect that's going to fly, you've got a real problem because you need to get so close to it with the phone that any flying insect is almost invariably going to fly off, and anything that's fast is going to run around, and you can't really see what you're doing because the phone's in the way. So mobile phones are great. They can take some really quite good macro photos. And I'm not, they're certainly the place to start if you're interested in, but there are better options. So the next thing we come on to are compact cameras, and compact cameras are a threatened species these days. Um, uh, there are manufacturers making some very expensive cameras. You can spend several £1,000s on a camera if you want to. But these compact cameras that used to be well, that we all used to use, say 15 years ago, we all used to take on holiday with us. The bottom has dropped out of the market for these cameras because mobile phones have taken that market away. So you can take some good photographs with these compact cameras. And what I would say, when I ask people, what do you want to use the camera for? One of the things we need to get at is, well, how much equipment do you need to cart around with you? Do you really want to carry a tripod and a flash gun and some reflectors and a heavy camera and heavy lenses? And for a lot of people, that's just not an option. And there's no point in having a really good camera if you don't bother taking it out with you because it's just too much trouble. So compact cameras are still good cameras. Generally speaking, you'll be able to take better macro photos with these cameras than you can with a mobile phone. They're generally easier to use, and they're reasonably small. Now I'm going to break the rule I said at the beginning. I'm not going to recommend particular equipment. I'm going to make one exception here, and the exception is this camera. So this is one of the Olympus TG series cameras. And these cameras are really exceptional. They are literally shirt pocket cameras. I can stick this camera in my shirt pocket. I'm not afraid to take it out with me. It's waterproof. You can actually use it underwater, and it's quite tough. I wouldn't recommend throwing it on the ground, but they are tough. They're not cheap, but they're not massively expensive either. The only bad thing I can say about the Olympus TG cameras is that they're so good and they don't generally break, so people don't sell them. People hang on to them. So it's actually quite difficult to find one used. I buy a lot of my photographic equipment. I don't buy new if I can avoid it. I buy used equipment from good resellers which give warranties on their equipment. And you can't find used TGs because once people have got them, they just hang on to them. So that's the one exception. But Panasonic, Canon, Sony, they all make good compact cameras, and you can get them quite cheap used, and they can take good mobile photographs. But the Olympus cameras are some of the best. If you're absolutely insistent on a recommendation, that would be my recommendation. Now, there is a problem, and that is that there is never enough light, as I've said. So what these cameras have is they've got on the front a little LED just up here. And what you can buy is, sorry, I'm just going to let someone else in. What you can buy is this little piece of plastic, which is ridiculously expensive for what it is, but it fits on the front of the camera. And then what it does is it redirects the light. So it acts as a ring light around the subject, and that means you can get very, very close to the subject and illuminate it from all the way around. And it have even has these dimples that you can see are some diffraction which prevent the highlights being very overly bright and burnt out. So if you are going to buy one of these cameras, I mean, they do cost several £100s. I would also shell out the extra 40 quid for the Olympus Light Guide as well. It's a ridiculous price for a piece of plastic, but it does make a huge difference to your photos. You'll get much better quality photos. You'll be able to use much faster shutter speeds, so you'll get less blur. It's definitely worth doing if you're going to buy this camera. You can come up with homemade versions of this for other cameras if you're sort of crafty or an engineer, but you can buy one for the Olympus cameras. So just some examples. Here's a bug, Drymus radii. So this is about 3 millimeters long. This is taken with my little Olympus camera. And getting a bit more fancy, I don't have to tell you what this is. You can figure it out for yourself. So this is the type of photograph that you're capable of getting. So this is using the light guide, and it's also using the magnification that you can get from this camera. So really, really excellent little cameras. But you can do similar things with other cameras as well. Now, when I said there was never enough light, that's generally true with one exception. And the exception is if you've got a shiny subject. So here we've got a seven spot ladybird. And like a lot of beetles and like some other things, they are reflective. And if you look at the photo on the left, you can see this circle of light. So we call this a specular highlight. This is actually the ring light, the light guide that I just showed you. You can see it comes up as a circle. So one of the things I've done with my little Olympus camera is this. I just took a little piece of packaging foam. This is nothing special. This just came out of a cardboard box when I bought something. And I just tacked it on to the front of the light guide with some tape. And that acts as an additional diffuser. And you can see in the photo on the right, this highlight has been largely abolished. And so this brings me to the subject of diffusion. More light is good because we can use a faster shutter speed, a lower what's called ISO, so you get an improved quality of image. But because when we're taking macro photos, we're so close to the subject, it can be very difficult. It can mean that we can burn out highlights on the subject. And so or additional lighting is important, but diffusing that light, so it's nice soft light, is extremely important as well. If you just use harsh lighting, you won't get very good results. So this is this is two versions of what I just showed you. So one version is this is my camera. This is a yogurt cup, a white plastic yogurt cup with a hole cut in it, which is the same size as the lens. Sit the camera on the top of the yogurt cup, put the subject underneath, Bob's your uncle, nice diffused light. But if you want to use other angles, obviously this only tends to work when you're shooting vertically downwards. You might not want to shoot vertically downwards. You might want to shoot from an angle or from the side. And it's a bit cumbersome if something is moving. So just stick a piece of plastic foam onto the front of the light guide and then put that on the camera. And it produces this much softer image. And so diffusion is a really important idea in macro photography. And this is really where some of the big advances have come in recent years. Okay, so we need to go back to the physics again. We've got another physics problem, and that is depth of field. As our object gets closer and closer to the lens, so when we get into the macro photography domain, we bend the light further and further inside the camera, and that means the depth of field decreases. And even though the things that we're taking photographs of are small, at a one-to-one magnification, you're probably going to only have a depth of field of 1 or 2 millimeters. And when you go beyond one-to-one magnification, your depth of field, in other words, the part of the image that's in focus in the camera, is going to be less than a millimeter in depth. And most of the things we want to photograph, if you think about a beetle or a piece of moss or whatever it might be, they're going to be bigger than that. So that causes a problem. So because we are now because we've abandoned, generally speaking, film cameras, because we're in the era of electronics where cameras are effectively computers, we can do something else. We can do what's known as focus bracketing. So focus bracketing is where we take a whole series of images and we take them at slightly different focal planes through the subject. And we can do this either by moving the camera very slightly or moving the subject. There's various ways of doing it. Then on a computer or in cameras, I'll show you shortly, we can recombine these images. So we've got software that can work out which the sharp part, the in focus part of the image is, and reassemble this stack of images into a single image with seemingly a much greater depth of field. And there are various ways that you can do this. Affinity Photo is a Photoshop type program that I use. Photoshop will also do focus stacking, as we call it, if you use it. And then there are specialist pieces of software that you can buy. Helicon Focus, Zarine Stacker are the two most common ones. And so this is an example. This is a macro photograph of a fruit fly, and this is one of the images in a whole series of images. You can see one part of this image is in focus. This hair here is in focus. The rest of it is out of focus. And then after we've stacked all the images together, we get this image where the whole thing is in focus. So this is quite specialist. You have to be pretty dedicated in order to do this, but it does get around this fundamental physics problem of the more you magnify something, the less your depth of field becomes. Now there is so taking the series of images at different focal lengths is called focus bracketing. And focus stacking is the process of recombining those images into a single image. Now, as I've said, you can do that using software, or if you have the right camera, you can do it in camera. You can set the camera to actually do it for you. So all you have to do then is hold the camera still, and the camera will do all of that for you and produce an image which is has a greater depth of field. And the that's another recommendation for the Olympus TG cameras. They will do this, but other cameras will do it as well. I'm not going to go through them all, but some Canon cameras will do it, and other cameras will do it. So you would need to check individual cameras. Now, I did say to create this series of images so that the software in the camera can recombine them, or the software on your computer can recombine them, you have to hold the camera still. You can't have any movement in the camera. By the same token, you also have to have a subject that's not moving. So if your subject is running around, or if you're out of doors trying to take a photograph of a flower and the wind is blowing, it's not going to work. This is only going to work if things are absolutely still. Limitations, but it does produce images that you could not otherwise produce, and we couldn't produce when we used to use film images because it wasn't possible to recombine them in this way. Okay, so we move on. We've moved on from a camera you can put in a shirt pocket. We've moved up to these older, these bigger cameras. What we would call SLRs, single lens reflex cameras, where you're actually seeing what the camera is seeing. And these cameras have interchangeable lenses, which opens up another possibility, which is that you can buy dedicated macro lenses. So these lenses are designed to work and produce highly magnified images, and the optics are set up for that. And your lens obviously needs to be matched to your camera. You need to have a lens from the same manufacturer, but the price here is well, apart from money, apart from money, he says glibly, the price is size and weight. That means you do have to cart it around with you in the field if you're going to take it out. And it also means that it is harder to hold a big camera still than it is something like a little camera like this. If you can brace yourself, it's generally easier to do that. So, but these cameras, because they have larger sensors and better software to some extent, and the optics of specialist macro lenses are better. This is the ultimate, if you like. These will produce better images, but it is important to ask yourself, is that really what I want? Do I want to lug a heavy camera around with me? Do I want to spend £1,000? I'm actually going to buy this thing and then let it sit in the cupboard because I don't take it out with me, I don't use it. These are all questions to consider. And, it may be under some circumstances, the mobile phone is the best option, or the little compact camera is the best option. But if you want to go to the ultimate level, well, actually not quite the ultimate level. I've got one more level after this. These cameras are the way to go. So um, the cameras we use nowadays are called mirrorless cameras. Old single lens reflex cameras where the light was bounced around inside the camera, and then fell on the camera sensor. Those have now gone now, by and large, and we are onto these mirrorless cameras. And these things really are computers with lenses stuck on the front of them. They've got all sorts of different programs. They've got a lot of software built into them. They are quite complicated to use, just like a computer can be quite complicated to use. So again, that's another question to ask yourself. Do I want to spend the time learning how to use a complicated camera and then be out in the field and try and capture something and try and remember which of the many, many menus this particular option is located in? They don't suit everyone. And you can take macro photographs using other pieces of equipment. But most of my photos, well, if I'm just going out for a walk, I will slip the little Olympus camera in my pocket. And I've just about always got a mobile phone on me for safety reasons. But if I'm going out and I'm going to do some serious recording, some serious photography, I will take my mirrorless camera out with me, even if by the end of the day I'm feeling the weight of lugging it around. Now, I did say that one of the big areas of advance over the last few years has been diffusion. So I showed you those pictures of seven spot ladybird earlier to show you what the problem is with having highlights on your subject. What has been developed? So this is a camera. This is a mirrorless camera. You can see in the right-hand image a mirrorless camera with a flash gun. So the nice thing about flash gun is we can control the lighting completely. We can have as much light as we want. And as I said, that light is going to be of an incredibly short duration. The flash duration is actually much less than the shutter speed. So that will help to freeze the object and minimize any problems with movement. But again, because we're so close to the subject, shining all that light on the subject is not going to produce good results. It's going to produce very harsh images where the highlights are burnt out. So what's been developed in the last few years are these things, and there are various brands of these on the market. But this has become known as the Flying Nun for obvious reasons. So what this is a reflector. Basically, this black bit is white inside to reflect the light from the flash gun down towards the subject. And then there is a diffusion layer that the light shines through. But importantly, that diffusion layer is not flat, it is curved. It bends around the subject. So the sides and the front are almost equidistant from the subject. It's not quite a dome, but it's almost a dome. And what this produces is beautifully soft light, but lots of it. And this is where you really start to produce very high quality images. Now, the problem with this, of course, is it's cumbersome. Trying to take this, most of these things will collapse and fold flat. But I mean, trying to take photographs using this is not the simplest thing. They're quite cumbersome objects, but it is the ultimate in lighting, and combined with modern cameras, which are capable of capturing very high quality images, and flash guns, so you can completely control the lighting and very, very good diffusion. This is the state of the art as far as macro photography is concerned, but it's not cheap. It's cumbersome. It's a lot of work, and that may not be what you want to do. You might want to choose a simpler option. So a simpler camera might be a better solution for you. But anyway, I'll just show a few photographs. So this is a small spider. So this is actually a focus stack. I can't remember exactly how many images in this focus stack, something like 20 or 30 images of this 5 mm long spider. So this is Clubiona compta. Another one, this is a woundwort shield bug, which is about 4 or so millimeters long. So this is me being, as I said, my interest is in capturing key features of small insects for identification. But you can also be a bit arty as well. You can have the background out of focus, and even though this leg over here on the right hand side is not fully in focus, I will claim that that's an artistic shot. As with portrait photography, the key thing with taking macro photographs of insects is always get the eyes in focus. There are very few situations, possibly none, where you don't want the eyes in focus. You probably want other bits in focus as well, but getting the eyes in focus is an absolutely key thing. And just another spider, slightly bigger one, 6 or 7 millimeters long this, but again, Narini montana. I often use a white background. I like a white background. It's a bit of a signature. of my style of photography in a way. I like the contrast between the subject, but I will use different colored backgrounds. I'm quite happy to photograph something on a leaf if that's a nice co contrast with the subject. I wouldn't photograph anything that was green on a green leaf. I would try and find a different color background, but I particularly like the this sort of high definition version that you get from Narini Montana. So these are all taken with a mirrorless camera, flash gun, and a diffuser, and then they are focus stacked together. And so it's a question of wrangling your subject. You have to become a spider whisperer to take a photograph like this. You have to be able to predict the behavior of the spider, when it's going to stand still and when it's going to run off. And one of the things that you find out very quickly about macro photography is, boy, you get an awful lot of failed images. There's an awful lot that you just have to delete. And of course, the advantage of digital photography is there's no pain involved in that. You can just delete the images. You're not running through rolls and rolls of film just to find one usable image. It doesn't really cost you anything extra. But a high failure rate, I'm afraid, just comes with the territory as far as macro photography is concerned. Either you move the camera or the subject moves, or something goes wrong. And you have to take a lot of photographs to get a decent photograph. But I mean, that's just the name of the game. And of course, it increases the feeling of satisfaction then when you get an image that you do like. Now, I did say there was one more level to go. This is something that I've not done very much of personally, but there is what's called extreme macro photography. Again, there's no absolute definition of what that means, but generally, what people are talking about when they're talking about this is greater than 5 times magnification. In other words, producing an image of a subject on the camera sensor, which is 5 times greater in size than the subject itself. And what there are various ways of doing this, but the normal way of doing this is to use a microscope lens and mount that on the front of your camera. Now, you can't just take a microscope lens and attach it to a camera. You have to use what's called a tube lens in between the camera and the microscope lens. And there are various ways of doing that. There are ways that you can use actually a telephoto lens as a tube lens. But in this case, there's extending bellows and the light is captured. So the subject is here. The light is captured by the microscope lens, and then it's a long way to the camera sensor, which is back here. You cannot hold a setup like this steady. And the second problem is you have a vanishingly small depth of field. So the only way you could produce images with this kind of setup is to use is to take a great many images, often hundreds of images, and stack them together using focus stacking. And many people who do this type of photography use these automated macro rails. You can program these so it will take an image, move the camera, define distance, take an image, move the camera, define distance, and so on and so forth. And the distances that you program these macro rails in are microns. So it very, very small as well. And obviously you can only take very, very small subjects. So you may see some of these things. Sometimes these things come up in photography competitions. But this is not something that you're going to do out in the field. This is a type of studio photography. It's way too extreme for most people. You can't have any vibration. So if you're on a bus route and the buses go past your house, forget about doing something like this because the vibration will just be too great. This is people start using anti-vibration tables for these setups. Really, really specialist thing, but it is the ultimate. It's not something that I do, but I just thought I would finish off the talk with that. So I'm I'm going to show you a few images to finish off, but before I do, I want to share with you the most important slide of the whole talk. And that is this. If you went to a Michelin restaurant and had the best meal of your entire life, and the chef came out afterwards and was going around the tables, would you ask him, what kind of oven do you use? Um, there's more to macro photography than equipment. There is an enormous amount of technique involved. And the more, like everything, it involves practice, and the more practice you get, the better you get. And you can take good macro photos using an enormously wide range of equipment. So don't get too hung up on equipment, and don't think that buying the most expensive equipment will necessarily give you the best photos. There are a large number of things to consider, which I've tried to go through in this talk. Okay, so I'm just going to finish up by showing you a few images I've taken recently. One thing I want to say is, please don't think I'm showing off by showing you these images. I could spend an awful long time on each one of these images, critiquing it and telling you what's wrong with it and what I'm not happy about and how I could have improved it and what I should have done and what I will do next time. So this is just the nature of the game. So this is something that you might recognize. Entries on a postcard, please. I just took this for fun when I got I bought my latest macro lens and I was just fiddling around. So this is, of course, ballpoint pen. This is a paper's eye view, I suppose, of a ballpoint pen. I like this. It's an arty image, if you like. I like the way that the outside is out of focus. I like the colors and so on and so forth. And it was just a good way of me learning how to use the camera and calibrate the camera. This is a water boatman, Corixid bug, Corixia panzeri. I like these. I photographed these bugs in a shallow white dish. I've got a shallow white ceramic dish, and I just put enough water in for the bugs or the beetles to swim around, but not submerged too deeply. And I talked before about being a spider whisperer. I'm also a bug whisperer. You have to learn your subject's behavior. And what happens is when you put these things in a white ceramic dish, they go absolutely nuts for a few minutes. They swim around like mad, they swim around like crazy. And then after a while, they will stop. And at that point is the point at which you start taking photographs. Because again, this is a focus stacked image. This is a combination of several images. So Corexia panzeri quite big, about 8 or 9 millimeters long. A bit bigger than some. And this one, don't need to tell you what this is, I guess. This is a seven spot ladybird. Again, slightly arty, if you like. Background slightly out of focus. A red bug on a green leaf, contrast with the background, and so on and so forth. So I quite like this image. Shows obviously details that you might not normally see, possibly unless you use a hand lens. So very common insect, but quite a nice image. Not perfect by any means, but reasonable. And then one of my most recent ones, this is a mining bee, solitary mining bee, Osmia cornuta. This is actually the first record of this species for Leicestershire and Rutland. I took this a few days ago. The key feature apart from the colour of this bee are these long horns on the face, one there and one there, which are very distinctive for this bee. And this is the proboscis, which it uses to take the nectar from the flowers. So this bee is about a centimetre long, possibly just slightly longer than a centimetre long. Nice detailed image there, just for fun. And then finally, one I took yesterday. This is a screech beetle, a water beetle, um, 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 just about a centimetre long. And you can see, hopefully, on the pronotum here, you can see some little water droplets. This beetle is actually in water. It's floating in water. It's in my white ceramic dish. Took a photograph. I can't remember. There's a few images stacked together here. But these are the types of image that you can take, and I'm aiming to capture the details so I can identify things, but I also enjoy the artistry of it, even if sometimes the subjects don't behave or the wind's blowing and it drives me around the bend, but still something I enjoy doing. Okay, thanks very much, and that's the end of the talk.